provocatively say you actually do more in your sleep than you do during the day. In the day, your body's just keeping you alive. But at night, it's doing everything that helps you to stay alive the next day, fixing all the damage.
Welcome to the QBC podcast, where we explore exciting new paradigms that have a meaningful impact on our day-to-day lives. I'm your host, Meredith Oke. Let's keep the conversation going. Join us in our free community by visiting qbcpod.com. That's qbcpod.com. And let's see where the quantum superhighway takes us next. So a lot of the time when we're trying to solve a personal problem, or really any kind of problem, the first thing we do is default back to the thing that helped the last time we had that problem. So let's say we're feeling a little depressed. Oh, going to therapy helped, or doing some sort of therapeutic framework really helped last time I felt like that. So I'm going to do that again. It's not helping. I guess I'm not theraping hard enough. I'm going to go harder. I'm going to do more appointments. I'm going to go deeper into my childhood. It's still not helping. And it sometimes takes us a while of hitting the wall like that. I did that with chronic fatigue. I'm like, everyone says food. Okay, I'll do this to my food. Not helping. I'll do that to my food. Not helping. Last time I changed my food, I felt better. What's going on? And you hit that wall over and over. At some point, it dawns on us, like, even if the problem presenting is similar to one we've experienced before, perhaps this time, for many various reasons, we require a new solution. So I just wanted to open up with that, because I think, especially for busy people, perhaps in their midlife, when they think about getting healthy, we kind of revert back to whatever information we absorbed last time we paid attention to that topic, which may have been decades ago. And we may have been told things like, go jogging and eat a lot of, don't eat any butter and eat a lot of pasta and, whatever it is. So I think the point that I'm trying to make is that there is always a solution. And sometimes the hardest part is when we think we know what it is and it's not working. And then we think there isn't one because we think we have it, but it's not producing an effect. See what I'm getting at here? So I would just like to be here as a reminder, there is always a new solution. Sometimes we've got to take a step backward, to take a step back to figure out and see what it is and open ourselves up to a bigger picture. And my guest today did that himself. He was a midlife corporate career person, doing very well, and through his own personal health challenges and revelations, decided to go down a different path and now helps other, mostly men, do the same. So we've talked a lot about women's health on this podcast, and today I do want to pay attention to the boys. So if you have a husband or a dad or a son or an uncle or a brother or somebody who might need a little extra spring in their step after all that they've done for their families and their careers over the last few decades, this is a good episode for that person. My guest is Roderick Lambert. He is a fantastic weight loss coach for midlife men, and we get into all of the things. He lays out a very clear path based on quantum biologic principles of how to regain a little more of our youthful vigor. And that's the first half of the episode. The second half, we nerd out a little bit on biophotonic emissions, because Roderick, I won't get into it, but he had his body's biophotonic emissions measured in a lab. Super cool. And we get into all of that. So enjoy the episode. I know you will. It's always such a good time. I'm so glad you're here. Don't forget to visit our friends at bondcharge.com if you need anything to get on your circadian journey. Also, as we age, we all know that our stem cells go to sleep. And I have a little sticker that wakes them up. Sounds crazy, but it's true. Go to qbcpod.com, click tools I use to see more on that. And of course, there is an upcoming certification live cohort over at the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, kicking off in January. If you have been considering that, registration is open. Enjoy. Roderick Lambert, welcome to the QVC podcast.
Hello, Meredith. It's a privilege and an honor to be here. I've been listening to so many of them, and now I'm actually appearing on one. It's like, oh my God.
Here you are. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I'm excited to talk to you and hear about your journey. You've done such good work, the light wellness message to the world, and especially, as I was just saying, especially to the men, because I talk a lot about women's health, and I'm like, oh, I've kind of been ignoring the boys. So Roderick, I know you work with lots of people, but you do have a strong focus on men of a certain age. So tell me what you're seeing out there in the world with your clients who are probably just out there living their lives and not overly focused on biohacking or anything like that.
Not really a biohacker, but when you
Exactly.
sort of look at what it is that brings health, it all goes down to light, water, magnetism, the mitochondria, and thus you have to sort of hack the modern environment because it's pretty detrimental in the way we've set it up in a standard way of life. But yeah, so men midlife, so whatever that means to you, I call it 40 to 60 years old. Typically, they're working in high-pressure jobs, have a family, achieved something in their career, and those sort of 20 or 30 years of intense hard work and achievement have led them to accelerate their mitochondrial aging or simply accelerated aging. And the ones that come to me generally are at a stage where they've realized, okay, I'm 50, I'm 30, 40 kilograms overweight, starting to feel a bit kind of not thinking as clearly as previous as I used to. Stamina's failing. I can't do the stuff I used to. And all the things that worked in my 20s and early 30s, like going on a health drive and dieting and running and going to the gym, they're not working anymore. So that's kind of the sort of typical client that I
That
talk
is
to.
a really good point. And I think that is a turning point for a lot of people. It's like we developed at a certain stage in life, we kind of developed ideas of what it means to be healthy. And when we're off track, we're like, oh, I got to get back to those things. Like I got to start running again and not eat so many donuts or whatever. And then you finally gather the willpower to do that. You get back on track and it's not having this at all the same effects that it had when we were in our 20s. And it's like, what's going on? How do you explain that to them?
That's a good question. It's something I'm still working on trying to get that message across, but I very, very clearly point all my messaging and then when I talk to clients, and the first thing I do with a new client is we just go briefly over what is the mitochondria? What are the mitochondria rather? What is a mitochondria? Let's ditch this idea of calories in, calories out. It's literally doesn't obey the 21st century understanding of physics as we know it. Now when you consider this little organelle, all the things that impact it and affect it, then that's where we're going to do the work. So yes, it is movement, yes, it is food composition, but it's also timing of food, it's the light diet, it's your circadian rhythms getting back on track, and some sort of, we do a bit of fasting work as well for better accelerating fat adduction and the benefits of fasting. So I try and frame it around, let's get your cells humming, your mitochondria purring back, at least as well as they should be at the age of 50, let's say, because that's the key to, first of all, getting rid of all the excess body fat and improving your stamina and energy and brain function. But also when you've done that and you've done it in the way we're going to do together and built those habits, then you'll be able to maintain it then for the rest of your life. And you will get the maximum health span for your lifespan.
We've been talking about mitochondrial health for a long time, and it's like, yes, of course, but it's not well understood out in the general mainstream at all. And the implications of thinking of health as beginning at the level of mitochondria are very wide ranging and really, as you said, go much beyond what the traditional understanding would be. So could you explain a little bit in your words for a general audience how you see it all fitting together?
Well, I think it mirrors my own kind of journey into this world, this subcellular world, even, veering on the subatomic. All my life, I didn't know what a mitochondria was. I worked 30 years in HR, human resources. I don't remember learning about mitochondria at school. I always feel a bit embarrassed when people say, oh, at school you learned it was the powerhouse of the cell. I don't even remember learning about mitochondria.
Neither do I. It was
to be
not
honest.
mentioned at all.
I thought it was calories in, calories out, eat less, move more, and I sort of maintained till the early 30s a slightly increased weight from my teenage years, but nothing unreasonable. But as you get older, you get more and more mitochondrial damage. They stop functioning as smoothly as well as they should, and the problems start to pile up slowly. And of course, I did the usual thing, getting up extra early to go for that morning jog, trying all sorts of diets and things, and generally sort of starving myself. It worked for a bit, and then you give up because something happens or life happens, and it all comes back again with interest. And I got to the point, I turned 40, become a father, and got a new position in my corporate career. After 3 years of that, I realized, first of all, this corporate god that we all worship, I didn't find it fulfilling to still worship. But also, I'd ballooned after a year or two of like intense jogging and eating pasta and vegetables 5 times a day and losing 5 kilograms. I obviously couldn't keep that up and got balloons to the heaviest and biggest I'd ever been. So I quit the job, my corporate career, trained as a coach. But at the same time, I had started to go down this sort of rabbit hole, peeled off the first onion skin of, okay, so it's not just calories in, calories out. It's this whole thing about what you eat. It's the macronutrients. So I started discovering the low carb, high fat world. It was like someone had taken a blinkers off my eyes. Oh my God, that actually makes a difference what you eat in terms of what happens to it when it goes inside you. And I just kept digging and digging and digging and digging. And while I'd started out as a life and business coach, I was still fascinated by this whole world of actually what is human health. Having applied it to myself and dropped all the extra weight, 25 kilograms in 7 months. And then eventually I just switched to being a midlife men's weight loss coach. By the way, I have successfully coached some women too. And I just kept going down, and I was getting this idea, okay, so it's the organs, it's the insulin, the resistance, etc. And then I realized, but hang on, but there's something more there. And you get these sort of things, when you start thinking about things, the universe starts putting things your way. There was a point, I think 3 years ago, someone had told me about, it was a money meditation thing. Joe Dispenza, I'm not sure who it was, someone like that, to play this 6 times a day and get into a kind of a meditative state. And then I read this book. It was called The Quantum Warrior, I think. But it really resonated with me. And funnily enough, my business was going in a bit of a fallow period at that time. It started going well. But even
that
funny enough,
interesting?
and
Quantum
then
effects.
I bumped into, that's what we're supposed to think anyway. Now, these days, I believe that there's a lot to say for that. But I bumped into the 7.5-hour interview between Jack Kruse, Rick Rubin, and Huberman, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was like, wow, about another 5 layers of onion
That'll take you all the
peel.
way to the middle of the onion.
And I was floundering like I was in a tsunami of tidal waves. I was completely lost, but it just fascinated me, and that's when I started really looking down, getting below the organs, the endocrine system, down into how cells work, and that took me to the mitochondria. And since then, it's just been digging deeper and deeper and learning more about it.
I love that journey. It's quite similar to my own, actually. It's like, okay, I'll try this. Okay, I'll try this, and then it's like, wait, what?
Well, try, but also read and study and listen.
Yes.
I mean, on this browser, I have something like 50 tabs open with various different papers that I still haven't got around to reading, but just too much.
Because yes, the research journey is intense, and then there's so much of it, right? It's not, there's 1 or 2 papers floating out there that we can extrapolate from. It's there are, I think in PubMed, last I checked, there were more than 90,000 papers on circadian rhythm / regulation, right? And then the last time I checked the papers on quantum biology, they were much lower, but they're building and building. So when you started to look at all of this, which is incredibly overwhelming, so good for you, what were some of the key insights that you started to have? And how did you start to sort of make sense of this world of mitochondria and light and apparently we have little organisms in our body reading frequency all day long. Like, how'd you land the plane on that?
I don't know if I've landed yet,
I
but
say we're never landing. we're going to be circling for decades.
yeah, but you know what's strange? It's like it just makes sense. For me, it just kind of fits. It's like, yes, that simply makes sense. That, you know, when you're barefoot on the ground, your autonomous nervous system resets to the parasympathetic. Or why it's so great here, you know, the forest circadian retreat, walking in the forests. Why it's just you come back from a weekend here and you feel like a different person. Is it the ions and antions of the air? Is it the green color of the foliage? Is it the infrared reflecting down off the leaves? Is it the lack of electrosmog that you have in a large national park? Is it just the fact you're moving, or the fresh air, or whatever? I mean, there are all sorts of things it could be, but you can actually sort of trace little lines of evidence to all these things. Some lines are longer, some are less, some are more speculative, some are more factual, but you can still do it. And it just makes sense. So I think for me, and also the first principles I do, I mean, not just Homo sapiens, what is it, 300,000 years of Homo sapiens, but just our ancestry. Then you get down to things like how life started on the planet, which is just, you get into life, the creation of life on planet, and you get into consciousness, and that's just really mind-blowing. But let's not go there right now anyway. It's logical. We were wandering around with maybe some skins on us, doing whatever we did, hunting, gathering, reproducing, maybe starting to make some tools and stuff, outdoors all year round. The only water we had to drink was in the natural sources of springs and rivers. The food we had was what grew locally and seasonally. And we spent a lot of time not eating, we spent a lot of time moving, we spent a lot of time in the direct sun, also in the shade, and it just makes sense. That is how we adapted. That's how our physiology is built, or has adapted itself to work. So when you take away all these inputs, then suddenly your physiology doesn't have that comfortable, familiar surrounding environment that it's spent hundreds of thousands, millions of years developing around. So I think it just makes sense from that kind of first principles point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really relate to that. On the one hand, it's like, what? And on the other hand, it's like, oh, yeah, of course we're supposed to get natural light. Of course there's a difference between real light and fake light. Like, actually, yes. Why haven't we been thinking about that?
Of course we woke up at sunrise and went to rest at sunset. It just makes sense like that. I mean, still have the physiology of cavemen. We haven't adapted that quickly to, it's been impossible to adapt so quickly to the rate of change that has been going on definitely the last 300 years, but in particular the last 150. And the last 10, it's just going mad. The exponential technological advancement, it's wonderful, but at the same time, it's almost entirely detrimental to what our cells require and are expecting and have adapted to do. So they are adapting and they're reacting to this new environment in a way that is meant to keep you alive, to survive the natural selection. It's these reactions manifest as what we call disease.
Right.
So, right.
Yeah, and for people like your clients, people who are in middle age and work a traditional career, those careers have become basically a full-time screen job. My husband has a job like that, and he is on Zooms today from 8 till 6.
Wow. Yeah.
He's got a window cracked and he runs outside every hour, but that's his life. And it used to be like you could still burn out from stress, but you weren't in front of a screen that much. I want to get into your experiment that you did recently. But before we get into that, so the blue light, right? So we're in front of all these screens just by virtue of our careers, for a lot of. So just walk us through how you recommend that somebody in that situation makes adjustments and why. Because I want this episode is to be shared with the men in your life. That's what this is for. So I want them to understand, okay, what should I be doing then?
What can I do? We can't go back to living as we did
Yeah.
only, 5,000 years ago. That's literally impossible in this day and age. So what can we do? So I'll take you through actually what I do with clients, because that's the easiest way. The Mitre Regen protocol, as I call it. So basically, we start with 4 pillars. So one is food composition. The only rule you need to remember about what you eat is that it should be local and seasonal. That's the easiest rule to remember. And of course, it should be thus, hopefully, logically, it's also therefore whole food, foods that grow in the ground or run around on the land, fly in the air or swim in the water, but it's not coming out of a factory in a bean. Yeah. So it's local and seasonal. And because I'm here at the 50th degree north latitude, Czechia, just like most of my clients, Germany, France, UK, that means in the winter, naturally, basically eating primarily animal-based. And then in the spring and summer, you're going to be adding in all the stuff that grows around you and is at the farmer's market, that sort of thing. So that's the food thing. Here's a quick tip for all you gents, but also the ladies, I must say, is they tend to actually underestimate the power of protein even more. But the first thing to do is a protein challenge. So basically I tell them to supersize their protein portions in their meals. Eat it first, chew it slowly. Don't watch TV and scroll on your device while you're eating, and monitor your satiety. And when you get to 8 out of 10, you stop eating. I get messages back because I'm in constant contact with my clients on WhatsApp. One client called it witchcraft, a lady, by the way. This is some sort of witchcraft, because she suddenly she didn't want any chocolates. She hadn't eaten for, 5 hours or something. Crazy, another guy. 3 p.m, so I had breakfast this morning, and it's absolutely weird. I'm still not hungry. He was a CEO of a bank. So it was like amazing what happens when you just start to actually give your cells the substrate that they need to actually then make energy more efficiently and less messily. So look at your diet. Look at not how much you eat, volume, but look at the content of what you're eating, the composition, and relearn your natural hunger and satiety signals. And generally that switches within a matter of days once they start that. Second boot camp, as I call it, is based on sleep and circadian rhythms. I don't normally give it the title "and the light diet" because that can scare people off. And in general, we do the sleep and circadian rhythms and the light diet put in here and there, etc. Just so they start getting the idea that the light we are exposed to has fundamental physiological, or we react fundamentally at the level of cells and hormones to the different types of light we expose ourselves to. But circadian rhythms, again, for the gents and the ladies, the phases of dark and light, absolutely key to all biological systems, and all the things that go on within them and the things they do are hooked up to this central clock that is the main signal is the phase of light and then dark and then light and then dark. Yes, different biological systems do different things at different times, but that's the pendulum that just ticks day in, day out. There's a sort of education, but I focus on sleep because that's what a lot of people suffer from. And when they fix the circadian rhythm, then suddenly they're sleeping better, not just sleep onset that the sleep biologists seem to get obsessed about. It's important how quickly you fall asleep, but it's actually what's going on during the sleep. You've got your sleep architecture. You want to have no disruptions, ideally. Yes, there's a certain amount of length, but you need certain things to happen. Leptin reset, the lymphatic system, clearing up your brain, the brain wash at night, all these other things. To do that, though, you have to get the internal cascade of hormones and that sort of constant interplay of cells, organs in the right synchronicity so they work in the right order and do the right thing at the right time. So that's really key as well. And because my message is about weight loss, your metabolism is almost entirely controlled by this circadian rhythm. And if you're not getting the right quality sleep, then you're going to really struggle to lose weight, at least long term for sure. Third boot camp, then we go into a bit deeper into fat adaptation and fasting. So we talk about the timing of food. You and I would probably talk about chrononutrition, actually eating when you're supposed to eat in the day, depending on the season. Ideally, going to eat during daylight, not at night after dark, but that's pretty hard for most people who are working. It's about narrowing that eating window down to, let's say, 12 hours or 10 or whatever is kind of works for them. but also starting to exercise what I call the fasting muscle, going to 24-hour fast, trying that a few times. Some people, one recent client said to me, no, I can't do 24 hours. I've been without food for 18 hours before and I got the shakes and felt dizzy. That's okay, it's cool. And after a month's gone by then, I think his fat adaptation had improved, his ability to switch between burning glucose, burning fat. So he did it and it was like, wow, that was so easy. And now he's mad about fasting. It's like for him, that is the biggest mind-blowing thing that he's learned from me, is that he can actually go 2 days now without eating anything at all and just be extra focused on all the stuff he has to do. And the final bit is movement. Yes, movement's important, but it's not about burning calories. It's about everything from the piezoelectric effect, about mitochondrial regeneration, etc., etc. So deuterium depletion. So those are the 4 pillars, and that's how I explain it. But I explained it in the context of their daily life. That's why it's one-on-one, because one lady I'm working with, for her, she's rediscovered her enjoyment of swimming. So she's now going 4 times a week to the local swimming pool. Another guy's got his own little sort of mini home gym and a treadmill. So for him, it's just tweaking the way he does his weight, but also how he does his cardio, because I'm a big fan of Philip Maffetone, or Maffetone, I'm not sure how you pronounce his surname, American sports scientist, and his math method. It's different for everybody, how you in the details, but the broad concepts are the same. And then we go for 2 months where I'm actually putting on the coach's hat, where I'm helping them to learn through their own experience and build these habits into what I call systems. So that actually they're building a system for continued success. There's no kind of end date or goal to achieve specific. Well, there is one, there are a couple, but it's more about it's starting to become their standard way of living. And then we might bring in things like cold thermogenesis and grounding, but that's based on the temperature of the client and how they're doing.
That's a very thorough and robust approach. I love it. There's one piece that I wanted to expand on a little, because I do find this really trips people up. And when I say things like this, people just stare at me like, what is, you are so crazy. The idea that circadian rhythm is connected to our metabolism. And we know it's connected to every biological function. But I think that one in particular, people are like, what? How does circadian rhythm is like when I get jet lagged. What does that have to do with my metabolism? Could you expand on that piece a little bit?
I will try to. And yeah, the first thing I'd say is that unless they're paying me, I don't talk about this stuff at all. Not even at home, because you just get looked at like you're mad.
Yes.
Or I'm on a podcast and I'm happy to divulge. But how does circadian rhythm impact your metabolism? The broader picture is I use Swiss railways. So it's basically the Swiss railway system is renowned for being on time. I don't know if it's still true, but it used to be. Or Japanese bullet trains. They run they literally to the second on time. So there's a central controller there that is ensuring that all the trains and all the junctions, all the stations, all the drivers are getting the right information at the right time, so that the trains can go speedily, without delay, safely along their routes to their destinations. As soon as that controller starts to misread his script or press the wrong buttons, then you're going to start getting accidents start going to get delayed, etc., etc. So including the train that is your metabolism, because that is linked to, again, the phases of dark and night, and also dark and light, and also when you eat, that time of that moment that you eat during the day, once, twice, maybe 3 times during the day, then that also helps. That's feedback for the circadian system about food consumption. So consistency is one thing, and regularity. So one of these trains I talked about, metabolism train, and at night, while a lot of people, I think, just kind of think sleep is just something you do, you switch off, and then in the morning you switch on again, and nothing's happened. And if you're lucky, you feel refreshed. Actually, I provocatively say you actually do more in your sleep than you do during the day. In the day, your body's just keeping you alive. But at night, it's doing everything that helps you to stay alive the next day. Fixing all the damage. I use the supermarket as an analogy, the 24-hour supermarket. That during the day, there's no time to clean up. All the stocks coming off the shelves, people are buying, they're dropping stuff, making a mess, etc. But at night, the supermarket closes, the cleaning crew comes out, and they clean up the stock. They restock the shelves, etc. If it didn't happen, that if that didn't happen, or it wasn't long enough, or it wasn't done good enough quality, then the next day when the supermarket opens, there won't be enough supplies. There'll still be a mess, etc. I don't often have to go so deep down into details like leptin signaling and being in a certain phase of sleep, a certain period after you've gone to sleep, which is actually not so much after you've gone to sleep. It's since you saw the first light that previous morning that then this sort of whole leptin signaling, I call him the main, or it, the chief accountant, the inventory stock taking that takes place at night. But if you're not getting to bed a certain time after you've got up and seen the morning light, in a certain stage of sleep, then that inventory won't take place. And your body simply says, or your body gives the brain, or a brain gives the message, okay, tomorrow there's scarcity in the environment. Everything we consume, we're going to have to store. That's the default mode that your metabolism is in, store, because there isn't enough. But if the brain is getting the signal, the inventory, and can take stock of what the food environment's like, how much fat there is in the body, etc., then the brain gives permission, yep, tomorrow you don't have to store, you can burn. And that will affect your appetite as well as how you actually use what you're taking. That was a long answer, sorry.
No, I love it. That's great. This is what we're here for. I think metaphors are the perfect way to do it, because I feel like once we can wrap our minds around it, then what you were saying about creating those systems and creating a relationship with food and light that's different from the one we had before, it becomes more possible, because the intellectual part of us does want to be satisfied. I always say my intellect needs like a bone to chew on so I can go and change my habits without it interfering too much.
Doubtless you've heard the phrase, when you know better, you do better.
Yeah, and to have enough to understand why. Because at the end of the day, that changing our light is not that hard. When you think about all the other things people think they have to do to lose weight, mitigating bright light at night and going outside in the morning is like actually thinking about, like, compared to gastric bypass surgery or liposuction or marathons or whatever people think they have to do.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty straightforward. And sometimes I think that's the issue, like it's too simple. But like, no, it should be more complicated. But not really.
Yeah, I agree. I have nothing to say. Well, it can be complicated because right now it's dark at 5:30 in the evening. Mm-hmm. Only gets light at 7 or something in the morning over here. So the social clock, unfortunately, is the same all year round. The solar clock changes as we progress through the seasons. And that has to, you have to sort of think about that a little bit. I struggle with it myself a little bit. What to do in the morning. I get up at 6, make my son breakfast, and it's dark. So what am I going to do about my light environment?
So what do you do?
Well, last winter, I was being very, very diligent about wearing my blue blockers and using just this, for instance, this little beacon here. It's a no blue beacon from your friends at Block Blue Light. But it's really handy, this. And I'm sort of not quite finding my way in the dark, but under these dim circles. And then once the sun comes up, getting outside. This winter, I'm not being as consistent or diligent, I have to say. So I'm using one of those bulbs that emits at least a full spectrum of visible light to kind of replicate that light, although I'm fully aware that it's maybe not even a tenth as strong as the sun's daylight, so it won't have the same effect. But yeah, I know of a great panel that I think you've had, Ken Cedar, on the podcast. Yeah, so his Soul Light Photo Nutrition panel, I'm a big fan because it's 13,000 lux, powerful, full range, not just visible, a balanced visible light, but also into the near infrared. So, almost about as close to the sun as you can get from a tech device, perhaps. And then you can switch it into a red and infrared lamp panel for therapy later on. So I want to get myself one of them, but I haven't got around to it. That would be the perfect for winter. That'd be perfect.
Yeah, those are great. And Ken Cedar's lights are great. It's a nonprofit organization, and he worked alongside John Ott back in the day. So, great product. I'm happy to support him. And I agree. And I love you explaining that because, yes, we have life. Our children go to school. There are certain things that, I know people who have opted out completely and run their own schedules, and I have deep respect for that. But not all of us have chosen to do that. But what I'm hearing you say is that there are ways to make choices that are at least keeping in mind the circadian aspects. And so even if we can't at this moment rearrange our schedule, we can not look at our phone first. We can at least have a full spectrum bulb or something approximating what we could be getting outside. I really do encourage people to work with a practitioner who understands this, because there are nuances to it. And it's just so important. So that's the message. It matters.
And it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yes.
It could be the best you can do.
We don't have any purity tests here. Whatever, every small step counts. You know, cracking your car window on the morning drive, putting on the blue blockers like you're wearing when you watch TV at night, like all these little things add up. All right, cool. So thank you so much for that. I think you have given like a really solid overview. I hope that all of the husbands and boyfriends who are and dads who are having this episode shared with them feel seen. Life is life and things happen. So if you're not feeling or looking how you'd like to be, there's lots of possibilities in the world to do things differently and feel good. And Roderick's a great guide for that. So, okay, so tell me.
You've been waiting, haven't you, the whole time?
I've been waiting. I'm like, okay, I've got to cover we got to do the foundational pieces. So you're just casually mentioning that you had your biophoton emissions measured?
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, well, you can't just do it anywhere. But
I was going to say, what's going on in Prague?
I was watching a lecture in the Light right now, the Guy Foundation. If anybody who wants to get into this, maybe you're like several levels advanced. Doesn't matter. Guy Foundation.
The Guy Foundation is amazing, but that is deep science, friends. So if that's you need, go there. If you need the deep science, go see the Guy Foundation.
But you had Bob Fosbury on recently. I just listened to his I could listen to him hundreds of times. There's always something new. But anyway, he was giving a lecture in the autumn series, currently ongoing, on light. And introducing the talk was this Czech researcher, scientist called Dr. Michal Cifra. And I thought, bloody, he's here in Prague. I should just reach out and contact him. And in that quantum way, as it happened, I reached out to him on LinkedIn, just say hello, we connected, etc. And as it happened, a few weeks later, the Czech Academy of Sciences had its week of open house for the Czech Academy of Sciences, various locations. And Institute of Photonics and Electronics, where Dr. Cifra has his lab, had also excursions and lectures there. So I signed up free of charge. It was great. Let him know that I was coming, that I'd say hello, poor guy. And so I went to see what was put on for the public, and I knocked on his door and we got talking, and I said, it'd be really cool, to actually, because his research is around ultra-weak photon emissions. That means the light that is created in your body all the time, what it's for, how to measure it, what it's good for, etc., and trying to understand it. So that is a large part of his work. The rest of his lab also is looking at how you're to use microwave EMF to modulate. They're looking particularly at microtubules in the cells. So that's very interesting too. But anyway, real expert on ultra-weak photonic emissions, your own biophotons.
Right. So for people just joining this party, our body actually emits light. So that does tie back into how light is so important. I mean, it has been shown you can't see it with the naked eye, but it has been shown that we are giving off what is called ultra-weak biophoton emissions. And so this guy has a lab where he studies those.
Exactly. Okay. And he's done some interesting papers and posters and research on the topic. And I said, it'd be really cool, at some point, if I would be able to measure my own biophotons. So he said, well, okay, let's go and do it. So I went into this. Yeah, it's absolutely cool. The guy's really nice as well. One of his research team took me into this dark room. There was a big black box with a cuff, a black sleeve. She said, put your hand in there. Then underneath there's a sensor, there's a place to rest your hand. And so they switched it on, and on the laptop next to me in some software, there was literally this graph that was demonstrating how many photons per second was coming off the skin of my hand. Yeah, it was about 30 to 40 photons per second.
Wow.
It was so cool.
That's so cool. We are so cool. Humans are so amazing. What?
Well, I don't think it's just humans. I mean, mammals at least
Yes.
do the same, I'm sure.
Biology in general.
Yeah.
Living systems. So what are they studying in terms of biophotons, and do they have any theories? Are there ranges where they like, oh, you have lots of biophotons emitting or less?
Right. I don't think the various work or the labs around the world that are looking at this have got as far as that. But Mikhail did say that he's a few months away from developing a product where it could be in a clinical setting at least used to measure biophotons. And because there's a correlation between the amount of photons being released and oxidative stress, that it could be, at least it would be one way of gathering data to then see, can measuring your biophotons tell you anything about the level of oxidative stress in the subject? By way of explanation, it's generally thought that the more photon emissions that are more photons you're emitting, the higher the oxidative stress at that point in time, at least. Because, of course, oxidative stress is present all the time, and it goes up and down. So potentially, and I'm working with a longevity clinic here in Prague, so we'll be talking about this soon, is how could this possibly be used as another advanced way, potentially measuring via the chronic or the oxidative stress in someone, their biological age as well, because there are lots of different omics and telomeres and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Perhaps measuring your biophotonic emissions would be able to tell us something about that. Maybe Mikhail would be someone we could have on your podcast, actually.
Yeah, I'd love to. I was going to say, I've got his contact info. Because, the way I've heard it described is that as we age, our cells leak light at a higher rate. And when we're young and healthy, we keep it inside of us, and it's a little tighter. Is that?
I think that's a very useful shortcut for people who don't know about what's going on at this level, because I would say, from what I know, that is essentially true. But we're going back to the mitochondria. That's why we start having cognitive decline and autoimmune and cosmetic skin rashes and this sort of thing as we get older, because more and more of the mitochondria in our cells are starting to function less efficiently. And when they start to function less efficiently because they're somehow damaged or the electron transport plane is blocked, then you get all these electrons spinning, falling off and reacting, because oxygen is highly reactive. If you ever set fire to something with a match, oxygen is reactive. That is starting to react with the molecules and proteins and things that are around in the cell and in the mitochondria itself. And this, of course, damages the mitochondria and the cell and all the other organelles and things inside the cell, which creates a chain reaction of more and more of this happening, like fireworks, you can imagine it. So the more of these start to do this, then you can reach a threshold within the cell where the cell will actually then collapse, the cell membrane will collapse and it'll spill out and start it all over again somewhere else, and therefore it's like an avalanche of this oxidative stress, as it's called, the oxidation of molecules in the cell. And at some point, of course, tissues make up organs, so it'll start affecting the organs in which this is going on, so whether it could be a pancreas, a kidney, a brain, a heart, etc. So as we age, this happens naturally at a certain speed. As we've discussed, the modern lifestyle actually has so many insults to our cellular biology that actually we are now, we talk about the pandemic of obesity, of heart disease, etc. It's a pandemic of accelerated aging. Simply, and it's, you can see this now that people are being diagnosed with cancers, unfortunately, at a younger age, with all sorts of these chronic diseases of lifestyle. At younger and younger ages, simply the rate that humans are aging is accelerating. So instead of getting it at 60 or 70, you're getting it at 40 or 50, etc., or even younger. As this cellular, basically, fireworks build up inside you, one of the ways we make this light is when this oxidation process happens, you excite the electron into a higher energy state, and when it comes back to the lower energy state, it releases a photon. So that's how they're made. Most of them are absorbed within the body, but of course, if you're measuring the skin, then you've got a chance of actually picking them up on a specific special thing, measuring device. I don't know anything about the engineering behind this, which is what I did. So that was a long answer. But yes, as we age, our cells start to get function less well, producing more light.
Incredible. I think very interesting, as our capacity to measure that increases the links between all of this.
That's a practical real world use, but for me, the intellectual challenge is not for me, but for others to do, but I want to understand it, thanks to their work, is what is going on? Why are we producing this light? What is it doing? You can hypothesize that because we know that there are very many molecules in our body that react to different spectra of light, then, is this light signaling to these other molecules in the near vicinity at certain frequencies of light to do things? Is this actually the microtubules actually can channel the light? So from one part of the cell to the other, from one part of the cell to the other to the next cell through the body. So it's doing something. It's not just there by accident. So that's what I would really like to know. But hopefully I'll live for this science to have been diligently and rigorously studied, maybe.
I think it's happening. I've been getting emails and finding new quantum biology labs popping up all over the place. And this lab, it probably doesn't use the term quantum biology, but that is what they're doing. And I think that investors are starting to see the potential in it for technological innovations and healing devices and so forth. So I feel pretty good. We're going to learn some really cool stuff in the next decade.
Yeah. And just by meeting Michael, apart from measuring my photons, he's just based on a post I was doing about this experience. He sent me about 8 or 9 really interesting papers to read about it. And then, his lab runs a monthly, I think, lecture with other researchers in different parts of the world. So I'm halfway through this amazing lecture by this, I can't remember his name, from Canada, who's now researching, the first 20 minutes is all about quantum supposed and already discovered quantum effects in biological systems. This quantum effect of how, light tunnels within the, I can't remember what he called it now, but anyway, the leaf of a plant before it finds it to then attach to a chloro. I don't know much about plants, but anyway, so that seems to be to demonstrate quantum effects in that. It's wonderful, beautiful.
It's amazing. Yeah, we'll track down that video and put it in the show notes because that sounds really cool. And yeah, it is. We've reached a point, it feels like, where we have just started to develop the technology to measure these things. So it could have been said theoretically, of course, there are quantum effects running living organisms, running living systems. But now we can actually see it. It's been imaged. And there's imaging of quantum tunneling that I think was around 2019 or something. I don't know if it was in a leaf, but the actual act of it.
Okay. I don't know about that. That's the one I thought the problem with quantum effects is that the observer is part of the quantum universe. So the observer impacts and influences the thing that he's trying or she's trying to measure. So that's a slight problem. But
yeah, I don't really know how we get around that because the quantum universe seems to know, even if it's just a machine and there is no consciousness around, it still knows it's getting measured, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the problem. But yeah, well, Michael himself, the thing I used was quite an expensive bit of kit, but he said there's another piece of technology that they use to measure actually the whole body. You have to sit there for 5 hours, but I've seen images of it, and this is even more expensive and complicated technology, but it exists. So I thought, hey, if you need someone to sit there for 5 hours and measure photons, I will do it. I'll be your guinea pig, happy to. So.
Oh, that'd be great. Oh, I'm very excited to know that we've got technology where we can start gathering a lot of biophoton emission data.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely tell him about today's podcast and ask him if I can pass on his contact to you, because he would be an interesting person to talk
I'd love to chat
about
with him.
Where the technology and level of understanding is today.
Yes. Yeah, no, this has been so super fun. Is there anything you'd like to add, Roderick, or any last thoughts? Covered a lot of ground today, I feel like.
Well, to the male partners of your female audience, but also to your ladies who are watching and to the gentlemen who are watching, I would say that you don't have to understand all this in great detail. You do need to have an interest a little bit, to a certain degree, to be open and receptive to the things that you hear Meredith's guests talking about week in, week out, because what we have been, and I was for almost my entire life, trained to think that it's all about calories in, move more, eat less, whether it be weight loss or health or whatever it might be you're striving to achieve in your health. It's not the whole picture. And it's only when you actually change your perspective. We're not steam engines. We have these trillions of little things in us that actually are far more complex and sophisticated than any kind of steam engine. And they require certain things. And then when you start to, but again, the things you do are actually quite reasonable. It's getting out in the morning sun. It's making sure you're getting some sunlight during the day. It's about keeping a consistent bedtime. It's about, making sure it's pitch black in your... They're not crazy things. While they may well be having quantum effects within you, you don't have to understand them. And you will see the difference. And yeah, so it's not too late, never too late. Start.
I love that. It is never too late. And it makes a difference for most people quite quickly. So thank you so much, Roderick. And how can people find you?
So, I post pretty much daily on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time preparing posts, and but I just really enjoy it. And I'm always learning new, fascinating stuff. I just feel I have to share, and it's difficult for my audience because it's not always about what they want, losing fat or having more energy. So that's my
okay, there's newsletter. A lot of nerds on LinkedIn who love reading all your random stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah. Roderick Lambert on LinkedIn. I have a links page, midlifemetabolichealth.com, where I've got a bunch of free resources you can get or sign up. There's even a slightly oddball health quiz you might want to try, see where you're at. It doesn't ask you most of the questions there. You won't be asked at your GP or your doctor. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well, Midlife Metabolic Health, Roderick Lambert as well. And otherwise you can DM me or through any of these platforms, and I'll be very happy to have a chat with you about anything at all, actually.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I very much enjoy your posts on LinkedIn. So thank you for taking the time to do that and reading all this research and then being able to talk about it in a way that those of us who majored in English can understand.
If it's any consolation, I have a bachelor's degree in music. And if I can understand it, then anybody else can, right?
Yes. And that's a great message. This stuff is getting right down into the weeds can be a bit much, but there are some great takeaways that anybody can understand if they choose to. All right. Thank you so much. We'll do it again sometime.
Thank you, Meredith. Yep. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
This has been the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. To find a practitioner who practices from this point of view, visit our directory at quantumbiologycollective.org. If you are a practitioner, definitely take a look at the Applied Quantum Biology Certification, a 6-week study of the science of the new human health paradigm and its practical application with your patients and clients. We also love to feature graduates of the program on this very podcast. Until next time, the QBC.